Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Catholic Basics. I'm Connor, and with me back again is Noah.
Wow, so thankful to be here again, Connor.
Today, we're going to talk about different ways that you can participate in Lent this year, and how different things that basically you can do to make the Lenten season better for you and more and closer to what the Catholic Church wants you to pursue in Lent. And also, we're going to talk about how Lent has been done or experienced in the past, as well as what the goals are. So, Noah, do you want to talk about
The contemporary kind of thing.
yeah, talk about one of the contemporary ways that you know about.
I think probably the most, I guess, probably, I mean, obviously apart from giving up meat and that kind of stuff, I think probably the most dramatic way that I have seen some of my friends doing is this thing called Exodus 90, right? Which is because, correct me if I'm wrong, Lent is usually 40-day period. Correct?
Yeah, that's 40. So this is
so this is, I mean,
extended.
theoretically you can do these 90 days whenever. It doesn't have to be during Lent or coincide with it. But the main idea that I mean, at least for the people I've seen doing it, they start back in mid-January, and the 90 days culminates in Easter, right? Which is pretty important day in our faith, I would say, when the Lord rose. But he riz, but he did riz. But anyway, so what I've, at least from what I understand from people that I've talked to, right, kind of what is the Exodus? Obviously, most importantly, right, the purpose of Lent is, right, let's give something up to remind ourselves ultimately of what Christ gave up, right, of his life, and then also just to bring ourselves closer to him through that.
Depriving yourself to suffer.
Yeah.
To embrace suffering.
Yeah, to kind of get in that right mindset of,
and to realize that you don't need as much as you have.
Yeah, ultimately, hopefully the realization is that all we need is him, right? So the basic the first principle of Exodus is obviously like prayer, right? And I think a lot of people do it with, I think specifically mainly a guy's thing, but a lot of people do it.
There's a female Exodus 90.
There's.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, obviously, I've talked to guys because I don't talk to girls. So, so what? That's not funny. So anyway, yeah. So you get a band of brothers, one could say, and you do this together. A fellowship of something, of not a ring, but
Exodus 90.
Of Exodus 90, yeah, you could say. Lord of the Rings, dab. But yeah, and so the idea is, right, to get this band of guys together doing this, keeping each other accountable, hopefully weekly meetings, praying for each other. And that leads me to basically the second, probably the most important thing about Exodus is, right, we're not just giving something up just to give something up. We're doing this to become closer to Christ and kind of hopefully become, realize what he suffered, and ultimately during this Lenten season culminating in his passion and resurrection, right? So the most important thing is prayer, right? And being in the scriptures for a certain period. It's either, from the guys I've talked to, it's starting with 30 minutes, hopefully by Easter, leading up to an hour a day of prayer, or just getting in the Word, just listening to his voice. And a really cool part of that I understand is that a big part of that is silence. One of the kind of, I guess, prerequisites or stipulations of Exodus that, when we pray sometimes, often it's so much like, God, I want this, I want this, I want this, fix this, fix this, fix this, which obviously is not a two-sided relationship. So one of the primary focuses of Exodus is to sit there in the silence with our Lord and hear his voice, hear what he would have for our lives. But then I think the most famous probably part of the Exodus 90 process is what's known as asceticisms, which I really hadn't, not being raised Catholic, I'd never really heard that word before. But what that is primarily, if you look through the history of the church, like people had always, I mean, really, if you think about how we live today in terms of today's society, like we're very pampered, right? With like we have water, we have excess food, we have all these things that make our lives, comparatively to believers in the first or second century, very easy.
At least if you're in the West.
At least if you're in the West, of course, yes. And obviously not everyone in even the United States. But yeah, obviously. But so and these asceticisms are, and I think each group kind of does little changes based on where they're at in life and whatever, but some of these asceticisms that are included in the 90-day process include cold showers, which I think is probably the most quote-unquote infamous one. Self-mortification, right? And that idea. So cold showers, fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays. Of course, not meaning literally not eating on those days, but
one day or
one meal and then two. It's one meal a day, and then theoretically on their website it says one meal a day, and then two other meals that do not add up to a full meal.
Yeah, that's like a way out.
Yeah, it is. And then obviously some guys do different. Some guys don't eat. Some guys just have one meal. Blah 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 blah. So that's kind of two of the things. Another one of the things is giving up. Obviously, like if you're on social media, so let's say like Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, giving up that. And really, I mean, the purpose is, to kind of limit your phone to the reason you have your phone in the first place, which is like primary communication that needs to be done, right? Not so much like messing around or just talking just to talk. And then also a big, and that kind of goes along with social media, right? Is that necessary for our lives? No, it's actually not, which is groundbreaking. But
whoa,
yeah,
people need their social media.
Yeah, we do. How else am I supposed to talk to people? Am I supposed to look at them and talk to them in person, Connor?
No, of course not.
That'd be disgusting. That's definitely not the way that God intended it. I'm kidding, of course. And then another thing, just some other things that are commonly included in the Exodus is only listening to music that is going to, quote unquote, literally quotation, lift your soul to God. And obviously that's very open, but right, you're not listening to like, pre-conversion Kanye, maybe, or, music that's going to set your mind on, very secular worldly things, whether that be drugs or sex or power. Like you
probably shouldn't be listening to that anyway.
Yeah, you shouldn't be, right? But so kind of the idea of what's lifting your soul to God. Also I forgot to mention the fasting is the same as regular Lent of no meat on Fridays. And then also another common thing, since this is at least the guys I've talked to are men, they're not females. One of the not that females don't like sports, but one of the things that is given up is the idea of watching sports on television. So kind of the idea of where my if you looked at my life and I told you that my priorities in my life should be in this order: God, family, and friends. If you looked at my life for a week, would the amount of time that I spend on those things reflect what I claim my priorities to be, right? So kind of the idea of Exodus again with like obviously you can go to sporting events, but it's not like I'm spending time where my time should be spent. And I think
so. Basically, controlling yourself.
Control, yeah.
That's basically the concept
of self-mortification, self-control. Obviously, one of the fruits of the Spirit.
Making yourself either do or not do things that
Yeah.
Based on.
And then another really cool thing from the guys I've talked to, right, is just like the idea of every single sacrifice or, like Connor said, giving something up or doing something that you're doing is to be offered up, right, for a very specific. It doesn't have to be specific, but the guys I talk to, right, it's much more easier for them to, for example, take a cold shower if when they get in the shower, it's like, okay, God, this is, I'm I'm praying throughout this time. I am doing this to offer this up for some particular intention that makes it a lot easier, from what I understand, to do that thing. So yes, that's kind of one of the probably the most extreme ways contemporary wise. And I think, a lot of people, and obviously that doesn't make anyone who's doing that any better, but I think obviously the other contemporary thing is okay, what, the basic, what am I giving up for Lent, right?
Well, if you're doing something really strong, and I guess this doesn't really work with Exodus 90, but if you're going to go hardcore on Lent, it makes sense that you could go hardcore on Mardi Gras or, on Fat Tuesday.
Which is actually today,
as
we record.
Today is Mardi Gras, when we're discussing. So, I think both of us are going hardcore on this Lent. So I think we would be able to go hardcore on Mardi Gras. But if you're not going to do much for Lent, don't do much for Mardi Gras. That's not the purpose.
It's not an excuse.
No, it's not It's not an excuse to gorge yourself unless you're going to
be restricting yourself.
Yes, exactly. Restrict yourself during Lent. So the history behind Lent is it's most likely comes from the 40 days that Jesus spent in the desert. And it's obviously preparation for the resurrection. And there's a couple different things. So it started off as where it was you were only supposed to eat one meal. That was the general take, that you were supposed to fast every day. Every day was a fast. And even I have an old calendar. It still has all of the fasting, and you'd give up meat. And later, this became very big practice, I think, because in France, and it's why Mardi Gras is the way it is that dairy was also something that you weren't allowed to have during Lent. So it was very important on Mardi Gras and Fat Tuesday, same thing. But in Mardi Gras, it's the French holiday or French tradition that you would eat all the different things that you weren't allowing yourself to eat during Lent, because obviously you're not going to be able to eat enough on Mardi Gras to actually
sustain yourself for 40 days.
Well, just like equate to what you're giving up. Anyways, but that's the general idea, and then things have over time moved towards lessening that, and the only 2 days, the days that you fast technically on the calendar are Ash Wednesday and then Good Friday. But you're always supposed to abstain from meat on Fridays. Every Friday during the whole year, you're supposed to abstain from meat. So, but it used to be, and I think this is a good idea, is that to bring about more fasting, as well as for all, married people. Abstinence is also an important concept of the Lenten season.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
For all of Lent?
Yeah.
I
mean, technically, I think Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, but really, it was meant for all of Lent.
Okay.
It's an important thing to do. That's one of the biggest things as a married person you could possibly pull away from.
Abstain from.
Yeah, abstain, because it's abstinence. Well, yeah. Abstain from. Anyways, so just keep that in mind as you go into the Lent season. It's all about. It's not about improving yourself. That's one thing that a lot of people think about, is that it's almost like you're not trying to lose weight or something like that. You're not trying to, get in shape or something. You're trying to give all of your struggles, all all of the discomfort that is going to come with Lent up to God and get closer to him. So think about that as you're deciding or as you're going through Lent. It's an important mindset to have, and just understand that this is supposed to be a time of suffering. So suffering is not something to be afraid of. It's something to be embraced. And all of the world is the life you live, if you think about it as suffering, makes you understand why there's something else, afterwards. There's something more important. There's God. And that's something that has been lost a lot over the recent time, especially as Lent has gotten pretty relaxed. As it's been relaxed, it's you really it has become less focused on. There's not really much need to focus on it except for 2 days if you do it in a very relaxed manner. Especially, and who knows how you're even gonna how you've been fasting during Lent in the previous times. I don't, maybe you have just been, sort of fasting. Maybe you just haven't eaten as much, light amount or something like that. Just like, that's kind of getting around it. Giving yourself in prayer and comforts, and giving yourself in almsgiving is the key. And you need to understand what is keeping you from God. And if it's keeping you from God, then you should give it up for Lent. It doesn't mean you need to get rid of it forever. You might. I don't know. It depends on what you're giving up. But I think it's important to do away with what keeps you from God. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you pretty much summed it up perfectly. I think it's I don't know, I think the part that I've always felt like I've been particularly attracted to, or just in awe of, right, his suffering, his passion. And I think this is a beautiful way for us to grow closer to him in that, right? And then just realizing that and then also I think in a greater extent, right? Like, even beyond Lent, it's a good reminder that, like, one, everything that I go through as a Christian is ultimately for his purpose to bring me closer to him. And second of all, because I know that's true, Romans 8, like, it's every drop or whatever, however you want to quantify it, of suffering that I'll ever experience in my life is for a purpose. And it's going to ultimately, if I handle it correctly, it should bring me closer to him. And ultimately, it's not going to be worthy to be compared, as Paul says, right? So I think it's a good way to, and again, like Connor said, not to improve ourselves or to, like, look how holy I am. But
that, like, too. Don't be a show off.
Yeah, but don't
be a Pharisee.
Yeah, Jesus was not particularly. Yeah, he had some words to say about them, didn't he? But yeah, but just to join with our Lord and follow him on his way.
Yeah, it's really something, and I think it will give us all a better perspective to properly participate in Lent. Will make the resurrection that much more, in awe. You'll be that much more in awe on Easter Sunday. And, my friend here, has a very, is, got something very exciting on Easter Sunday. Would you like to, well, I guess it's Easter Vigil, but would you like to share what you're doing on the Easter Vigil?
Yeah, I think I talked about it a little bit in the first episode.
I don't think you did.
Or maybe
did
I
you?
didn't.
Let's
anyway,
remind
I'm in the
everyone.
process of RCIA, so I will be receiving the Eucharist on.
And confirmed.
And confirmed.
He'll be a full Catholic. Anyways, from all of us at Catholic Basics, have a, I guess, what's the word? Tough Lent. Have a tough Lent.
But enjoy today, because today is Tuesday for us, so yeah. But probably not for you, so keep fasting.
We're going to have fun today, and we'll all have a tough Lent, and
but it's good.
We'll get something great out of it, and that's the important thing.
And that's him.
Yeah, we'll get him.
Yeah.
We'll get him. And don't forget, Sundays aren't part of Lent, so that's a little bit of a break. And then there's
Fat Sunday.
What? It's not Fat Sunday.
I'm kidding.
But yeah, just remember, you're doing this for him, not for yourself. Have a
blessed and tough
Lent.